Good morning. Effingham Board of Selectmen's meeting for September 28, 2021. Before we get started, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. All right, let's dive right into it. Make a motion to pass the selectmen's minutes dated September 21, 2021. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor, Fuller, aye.
All right. Oh, of the minute.
You can, as long as you read it, and you agree with it, you can still vote. We also, in the signature folder, did an acceptance of the energy efficiency incentive offer letter for $8,350. This is for 50% of the cost of the recent insulation project at the historic town hall. So the good news is we get it back, and it'll help offset the cost of the asbestos that we weren't counting on. Manifest, make a motion to approve the manifest dated September 30, 2021 in the amount of $44,246.71. Wait a second.
Second.
All those in favor, Fuller, aye.
Aye.
Make a motion to approve the manifest dated September 29th, 2021 in the amount of $6,245. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor, Fuller, aye.
Aye.
Approve the corrected manifest dated September 21, 2021 in the amount of $27,317.27. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor, Fuller, aye.
Aye.
Approved non-public minutes dated September 21, 2021. You hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor, Fuller, aye.
Aye.
All right. In the mailbag, we had a letter from Avatar regarding utility rates for 2022. And this is basically, we have a situation going from a year and a half ago, I think 2 years ago, regarding Eversource creating an issue where they're disagreeing with their property assessments. As part of what's going on with rates, the Avatar was letting us know that there may be an increase to redo some of the paperwork at $150 an hour. We do not know what that price tag is going to be at this point. JP Pest Control has informed us of a 2% increase next year on our pest control. This is the pest control for each of the town buildings. Can we just make sure when we get ready in the budget part of that piece that we kind of tally every building and then we'll just add the
Okay, staff were wondering if in this building we could have them address spiders.
they are supposed to do inside and outside. The contract basically says it's all pests.
Oh my gosh, yeah, no, he comes and is gone and
That's all right. The nice thing about it, if you discover something in between those times, you call them, they come, and it's no additional charge.
okay, I will make sure they know for next time.
Okay. There was a letter in there for the Lakes Region Planning Commission, public meeting dates for the governor's advisory on intermodal transportation. And there is a formation of the Carroll County Communication District Planning Committee memo in there. And that brings us up to administrator comments.
Okay, I have a couple of updates to the report I did. On the auditor's estimated date, Tim thought it would be the end of next week.
Okay,
He has a capital from Greg and will include that.
so rather than getting like an interim report, we're gonna get the final report?
I asked him for when he could get a draft to us.
Okay, good,
So
okay,
that was
and the next week, perfect.
Um,
And Audrey, when you get that in, can you just make sure the board gets it
Yes.
and the budget committee chair? Thank you.
Sure. I finally have a human at Clean Harbors. His name is Kevin. And I asked him to send me a process document of the oil containment and how they would get it. Because everyone thinks like we're ready to go. So they say, oh, well, you know, we can come out and test and be there in 2 weeks. I went, no, I want the process. I want the pricing. Do we need a contract for it? Do we get stickers, labels, whatever? And so he's putting all that together. So
Perfect.
I have a name and a phone number. It takes a while. You saw in my report that A and B had fixed the lock on the front door.
Yes.
When you stand at that door, there's a major gap. You can see air through it. And sometimes people actually put envelopes through there.
Oh,
I
like a mail drop.
I
Okay.
asked how we could insulate it better for this coming winter. And he recommended that I contact, it was a glass company. And they, the people who do doors, and they would actually come out. I just have to, he said they would probably have different widths with them, but give them the width of that seal and they would put new seals in between. So I'd like to go ahead with that.
Are you okay with that? Good, yeah. And Granite State Glass is one that I've worked with in the past, and they'll lead you all of it.
Yes,
You're out of Wolfboro.
Yeah.
For this location.
and A and B is going to go ahead and schedule the police department in moving their security system around. So I don't accidentally turn off an alarm when I shouldn't, because something's going on in there. Let's see.
Sean usually notices it though when he leaves and it goes off, so.
Well, I noticed the box was gone this morning because, yeah, he's like, can you just leave it in the selectmen's room so I don't have to set anything? On October 13th, I know it's a couple weeks away, the treasurer needs to schedule how checks can get signed so we can hand out the paychecks on the 14th. And so that's a scheduling issue
Mhm.
that I thought maybe next week I could meet with her about some of the processes between the selectman's office and what she's doing.
Yep.
I don't know if one of you want to be here or not.
You should be able to
Because I'll
handle
be
it.
here late. I think that's the budget committee meeting, right? The 5th.
So Audrey, along the line of the treasurers, when Elaine sends us that quarterly report that you shipped us this week, we just want to make sure we get that out to everybody when we get it in so we can see it too.
I haven't seen a quarterly report from Elaine this week.
You did not see a quarterly report?
No.
I thought it came from this office. Okay, I have a quarterly report
Okay.
and I will send it to you and we'll just need to make sure when that
All
when
right,
it comes
because
in.
the last one had errors in it, so it would be good if we tied out, we tied out to her numbers. In addition to the things I have listed outstanding, I still have to do the RFP for the IT. Lenhard said their contract and initial quote did not include the police department. So they had no problem selling us 2 computers and installing them. But last week I had them find out why the 2 computers out there were slow. And he came back with, they went out and looked, but he came back with that wasn't part of the quote. I didn't let him know we're putting the whole thing out to bid.
They were supposed to be back at the beginning. We missed out.
So, let's see. On November 16th, Darlene and I are both out of the office. I'm going to reach out to Teresa and see if she can run the Zoom meeting, in which case we can do minutes from
Zoom.
the Zoom meeting.
Okay.
I was just thinking if I can be somewhat remote. And I think that's what I have.
Good. Thank you very much, Audrey. Lenny.
On the letter for the no two trucks.
Yeah.
Third one down is Clough Road, not Cough Road. Just a spelling error.
Okay.
No biggie. You gotta remember to grab the signs for snow road tomorrow. Are they here?
They're right there at the door, ready to open the door. I got them all stacked there.
Okay. Get them.
I'll put those up tonight.
The rules for the cemetery. We should put on, update it, put on there that no family interment can be taken to without one of the trustees being there to witness it per state law. Families can do their interment for ashes. But, if there's no licensed undertaker there, that has to be witnessed by one of the trustees. And I told that to a lady that bought some lots there, but they went and buried her husband's ashes and never, probably forgot. So if it's written on there somewhere.
Okay, maybe later we can go over who the trustees are. I'm not sure I know that.
Select board.
Hi.
So, as I'm thinking about that, we probably ought to have it in the agreement.
Yes, yeah.
Not just we have it in the explanation, which is kind of that one-page handout,
Yeah.
but also
Both
make sure it's in
places.
the agreement.
Both voices.
And that is real important because I ran into an issue up here a couple of years ago. They didn't contact one of the trustees when they were doing a burial and kind of like to the wrong spot a little bit.
That's all we got for right now.
Okay. So, as far as putting up the signage, you want
No, I
Set a
can-
time
I
tonight?
can get that.
to, okay, all right,
I'll do it about 5 o'clock.
okay, all right.
I'll let the people know that live there.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop today on the way back and
Okay.
leave notes.
I see
So
Kevin was there with grader and ditched it yesterday.
they did,
Put all the dirt out the road, covered up the
all the little,
engineering spots.
Yeah. I saw that this morning, right? Oh, well, but the ditches definitely needed it, because otherwise they were just gonna puddle back in the road and cause a problem.
Is that what he's doing out on our road today, then, is ditches, because I had to go past him to round and hit you today, he just did our road a few days ago.
There,
Wow, he just skimmed it
Okay,
on his way out to Clark Road.
okay.
Yeah.
Wondered, because it's like, I swear he just did ours, okay.
you all set?
Yep.
Mr.
Yeah, I
Hart?
just got a couple of things I pulled out today. Audrey, on the starting point invoice here. So an odd amount, you got $3,098.
That's what they asked for.
That might be from last year. I think the amount might have been at one point in time, 398. I don't know if that.
I thought they were all rounded out.
Seems like there was an odd number. once
One of
in
them
the
was an
past.
odd number. I think it was that.
There's another one that's usually an odd number, that's like $700 and some dollars. Yeah.
No,
That-
that services.
That one
Yeah.
may be incorrect, Tom.
Yeah, that don't sound right.
Doesn't seem like the budgeted one.
We'll double check before we mail the check.
All right, and then more bookkeeping on JP Pest Services. It's still Brian Burke's name as the contact. There's another one I just wanted to remind you that please do not mail check or hand deliver it to them.
Right,
Okay, just so we're on
that's why I left that on there.
another
I'll
contact.
take it.
Thank
I'll
you.
take it off.
Then from Conway Technology Group, that's for the,
Copy.
okay, there's still, we've got a name on here, Cheryl Fire.
Do you know how many times I've asked them to change that?
Okay,
These are
It's not easy. to
It's not
do.
easy to get a whole thing.
just bring it up again, because
I
we get
know.
them all. That's it. Thank you.
You put them on the academic holiday.
I know, they do it every month.
I spoke with the roadside mowing guy when I got back on Monday. He said he had his truck out of tractor out of him. It was being repaired, he had to put it back in, wasn't right, and that's what we're waiting on. I mean, at this one, it says, getting restless over here, we need it, we can't,
Snow's coming. but we
go
don't
elsewhere.
know. Yeah,
I don't know anything.
yeah, if you can find somebody else,
Exactly.
that's not a problem. Okay,
That's it.
anything else? Sir?
No,
Okay, reminders, or a reminder of what's happening in the next few days. So Snow Road paving is going to start Wednesday morning. Lenny will be posting the road closed and detour signs tonight. Grinding and paving is going to occur Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So 29, 30, and October 1st. So one day for the transfer station. Wednesday will be a detour. everything should be back to normal for Saturday and the weekend. So
Okay, so we can still get around the back way going around.
they haven't shut it off as of yesterday when I drove it. Yeah, it's ready to go.
No, I just desperately need to go Wednesday because I didn't make it over the weekend, so.
Yep, yeah, just drive up around.
Good to know.
Under old business, there was an ambulance contract meeting last night of the 6 towns as part of our contract at the Freedom Town Hall. And we got an update from John Hatch, who's the executive in charge of the program for our area with Action Ambulance. All good news. In fact, they're actually doing stuff on their own that's actually going to improve the quality of services at no additional charge. They're finding things that they can improve, and they're just automatically doing it. So we benefit with the improvements at no additional charge. The primary reason for last night's meeting was to set the formula that will determine what we need to work on for the budget next year. And last year, the group had decided not to change the rates. And Effingham made out really well on that because our actual usage had gone up, but they didn't want to modify the rates. So what was agreed to last night was to look at a 12-month period. So the rolling anniversary date is April 1. So they're going to look at April 1, 2020 through March 31, 2021. Look at that 12 months of activity, create the percentages of the usage by each town, and then go to the contract and look at the total amount that's due with the inflation increase for next year, and send that report out to Audrey, which will distribute to the selectmen. So in about a week and a half, we should have an extremely good idea what our rate's going to be next year. So we had overshot it by a few thousand this year because we weren't sure whether we were going to get a retroactive request to pay. It looks like that's not going to happen. That is good news. But it does mean next year's number is not going to be far below what we have this year because our numbers are up. One of the things we'll talk about when we do that in the meeting is just a reminder on the Green Mountain Treatment Center contract we have for reimbursement of services for their use of the ambulance in a commercial setting. Speed studies.
Chuck, on the ambulance meeting, did it come up that we need to have an insurance certificate? Are they gonna provide those? Or should I-
That did not come
Okay,
up,
I would
but
check
you got
with
John
John.
Hatch's
I
number.
do.
Yeah, just ask him to do that. And if it's an oops, he'll send it to everybody at that point.
Thank you.
Speeding studies. So I had a chance to talk with LRPC last week, and I have a call into the New Hampshire DOT office, the Bureau of Traffic. I'm going to get more information. It looks like studies can be done. Unfortunately, because of where we are in the year, they're at pretty much the end of their study period, so it's probably not going to happen this year. We will have numbers on what it'll cost us to do it, expected timeframes to analyze, and whatever the requirements are by DOT. Is one of the things that LRPC told me is at least one study they're doing for DOT. DOT is requiring multiple time periods of study, which means you create the cost each time you run out to do the study. So I've got some clarification with New Hampshire DOT. I've asked for it. I'm waiting for a call back now. If we decide to move forward with it, it'll happen after snow flies next year, once we're into spring and the early summer of 2022. Road contractor ditch work, Lenny just mentioned that. Audrey, I know Brian Duggan reached out to you regarding some additional information from Randy. Do you need any of us to help get that from him, or are you comfortable getting it from him?
No, I talked to Randy
Okay.
and I told Brian I would talk to him this afternoon.
Okay, good. The other thing I did was follow up on the process, the criterion process for the New Hampshire retirement system for employee coverage. As of today, I have partial information, and I should have all the information for next week regarding what a process would be if the town decided it wanted to add town employees, not just police department, to the New Hampshire retirement system. And we'll also hopefully have information around other alternatives if we decide we don't want to do New Hampshire retirement system, but we would like to offer the benefit. So that's being worked on right now. The other thing that I updated or made some inquiries about was the employee benefits for short-term, long-term disability and group life insurance being available to employees. Those contracts were actually signed back in the 2010 to 2013 era. And in the contracts, it spells out minimum eligibility of hours for each particular type of service that would be available. So if an employee worked 22 hours and requirements 20, they would qualify from that perspective. It's not automatic to the town because the town personnel policy says we will only offer benefits to full-time employees 35 hours a week or more. So at this stage of the game, it'll be Audrey and the 2 police officers. And then the numbers, hopefully for budget, hopefully we can get Tyler in the system and we can understand what the actual numbers are going to be. So we can budget for that next year. And I want to take a look at the personnel policies it states right now, because I believe employees have to contribute 10% of the premium out of their paychecks. And I don't know whether that's pre-tax or post-tax. I don't know if it spells that out. If it doesn't, we probably ought to have a short discussion on the impact of that. And I'll also check the long-term contract to see if they actually spell it out as to how it has to occur, which normally happens.
Retirement or health?
The short-term, long-term disability.
All right,
So the three minis
okay. Yeah, with you.
from that standpoint. And waste oil, we talked last week or so ago, $2 a gallon versus $1 a gallon, not charging more for potentially contaminated. Is everybody good with 2? So we need to create what we're gonna do and put it into the transfer station and then hold a public meeting and change that ordinance.
Do we know what it's costing us?
$1.
Plus 165 for the test.
So when they come, and then the test kits, they were last year $9 a piece. So, you know, if we're gonna test the blue barrels, 55-gallon drums to see that it meets the criteria and then decide how we move forward, you know, that's a test at that point in time, not a test for every single person
Right.
coming through
Okay.
the system.
Chuck, would you entertain any public comments on that?
Sure.
I've looked at these type of things and the oil stuff in the past. One of the things, I think the big concern with opening back the oil up was the potential harm to the environment if the town doesn't offer this and what some folks choose for an alternative. With that, the nature of the transfer station isn't always to break even or cover all your costs. Some of this is an accepted cost on the town to deal with materials. When you're trying to offset your costs for a tire or a TV or a refrigerator, that's kind of one thing there isn't a potential huge hazard facing the community for that guy or gal that throws that on the side of the road. It's problematic, but it's not devastating. Oil is the other side of the coin. So taking it in for say $1 a gallon, you may get people, certainly the people who would normally bring it in would probably pay for that 5-gallon pail, $5. When you go to $2, I think there's a mentality that you might run into. It's like, hey, I pay $2 for that gallon or whatever. You know, I'm not paying $2 to get rid of it. I think if the town can keep this at a minimum cost, I think that's an acceptable way to offset the risk. I think we have to take a loss essentially on this program to ensure the safety of the waterways.
So if I'm hearing, if we did $1, we based on what we know for the pricing, we basically covered the oil, normal oil recycling. But as part of the transfer station budget, we would just have to absorb the cost of the test kits as well as the testing for each time we have them out.
Right. It's just to offset, to phrase some of the cost. Think of it like with your demo, we take a bag, you know, boom, that's not getting paid for. Larger amounts we get paid for. In the end, we probably don't cover all of the costs associated with the hauling.
We do not.
Right. So there's a certain amount of you're not breaking even, you're certainly not really gonna make money. But you're trying to offset the taxes for those people who use it more than others. The oil is just that, this is like a different animal. This has a negative environmental impact if not handled properly, so that the town should minimize the cost to the taxpayer, in my view, so that it encourages people to come in and deal with that hazardous material properly. 'Cause it is a hazardous material.
Okay. Lenny, any thoughts?
No.
Okay. Tom?
I believe one of the sample towns I had brought in when we discussed it a couple weeks ago was, it was something like $2 up to 5 gallons. So that's also an option if people are gonna bring in, they change the oil on 2 vehicles on Saturday morning. What does that look like?
Want to do a split formula in that?
So it was $2 for 5 gallons.
Up to.
Yeah.
Something like that is an alternative also.
$2 up to 5 and then $1 after that.
Well, you're actually gonna be losing. You're gonna take in 2, it's gonna cost you 5. Get rid of it.
Yeah, but it's keeping it out of the woods.
Was it $2 for the 5 gallons or $2 a gallon?
I
I
can,
mean,
I can
a
grab
dollar
that
a gallon,
and,
like Mike said, would be, I think, more.
Yeah,
5 quarts on, the average oil change on an average vehicle, so, $1 a gallon, 4 quarts.
$1 is an easy number for people.
You can have that in
And
your
it would-
cup holders.
And that would get us in the system. I'm good with the buck.
I mean, the problem I can see is somebody brings in 5 gallons in a 20-gallon barrel and says, oh, that's only 2 gallons. And you put in,
That's part of the discretion the
yeah,
gentleman.
but I mean,
has.
that's what, then you put in the.
Yep.
The heat on the transfer station guys to determine whether it is or it isn't.
Which in my discussions, that's common play and they
Yeah.
deal with it. My
But I
buddy
mean-
Mark and Bill.
They get yelled and screamed at a lot, so I wouldn't want them anymore. So,
I'm
I
good
mean,
with-
a dollar a gallon, like Mike said,
I'm good.
that'd make it simple and
You're good.
easy.
All right, we need to add this and there's a couple other minor edits I think that we need to make that I've got my notes. And I'll work with you on that.
Ms. Kirkwood just said that most garages and O'Reilly accept motor oil for free, I believe 5 gallon limit at a time. So just since you were taking public comment, I thought.
Yep, no, that's good. When we designed the ordinance a couple of years back, we thought about putting people, garages that were willing to do that kind of thing. And when we reached out to them, they said, no. Because people are coming with bad oil and everything else, and they didn't want to be stuck.
Okay.
Let me make a quick note here. Okay, $1 a gallon it is. Okay. That Province Lake Host Program. We know that the Conservation Commission doesn't want to include that number in there this year. And one of the thoughts is where to put it inside our current accounting system. With some support with the budget chair, we can actually add that under the line item for, I didn't write that down in here, other conservation, make it a sub item 4619.1. And I'm good with that, if you're good with that, Lenny. Okay, good, we'll do that. The other thing that we received some information on is Carroll County Broadband is getting ready to gear up for its organizational meetings. And the reason they delayed from when we passed, yes, we won part of an organizational meeting back in the town meeting. The governor apparently signed some legislation recently, which allowed the decision to be made by the local governing body does not have to go to a town meeting. So that's why they delayed it, because they had half a dozen towns that hadn't responded. So the letter basically is requesting us to name 2 people that would represent the town of Effingham in this organizational design meeting. So this is, here's what we want to see in an organization. Here are the things we want to have as part of that organization, pros and cons, come up with a format that would ultimately have an organizational format. When we were originally talking on that a year or so ago, year and a half ago, people figured it was going to take between 1 and 2 years to get that completely done. So that was comfortable for all the towns. So this doesn't bind us to anything. This doesn't bind us to any related costs whatsoever from a property taxpayer standpoint. It's all about forming an entity. So the question I have from the audience and the board, do we have anybody that you know that might want to participate in that?
Other than the first name I gave you, that, of the broadband.
Yep.
Uh,
Then
She
and
was quite interested.
I told her I'd reach out to her again
Yeah.
after we got more
That's the
information.
only person I could think of.
All right, Tom, anything?
I don't have anybody.
Anybody in the audience want to volunteer? Teresa, do you have enough room on your plate for? I'm only kidding.
I wish.
Yeah, I know, I know.
Make it straight.
Are you gonna look for somebody who has some kind of, experience and skill set related?
I would like to be able to focus on that, but at this point, a warm body to represent Effingham, I think is probably going to be the challenge.
I was just gonna ask if that means like we would have if whoever's volunteering to be part of this, if they will have information from the board and just kind of taking it to this organization to say that, or?
So
what?
my reaction to what I know so far, because I attended a lot of these meetings over the last 2 years. They actually have an executive director of a program that already exists out of Vermont. And she's been an unpaid consultant that I'm aware of for this entire project on what to do and how to do and what steps not to make because it'll cause you problems. So there's going to be a lot of leverage in an entity design from what's already been done with another major organization in Vermont.
And do we know how many hours,
When
time this is?
we were doing the monthly meetings, it was basically 2 hours, 1 time a month.
2 hours, 1 time a month. Day of the week, usually,
It was a morning usually.
in the morning, okay.
But that, I mean, the group will ultimately decide what they need to do, but I suspect there'll be meetings and then there'll be some homework done in between and then back to the meetings.
And you just go from town to town too, you know, always meet at the same place, is that correct? So you didn't, not one person had to drive 2 hours to get to a meeting.
Yeah,
That's
it's,
gonna be my other question is like, where are we talking?
well, the meetings we had last year were Wakefield, Wolfboro, we had 1 or 2.
So local.
It's local, yeah,
It's,
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
So
even though
like
it's,
Going all the way across the state to, yeah.
Oh, it's county.
Yeah.
so they're trying to get all 19 towns, but I don't think anybody's gonna be going to Hart's location to, hold a meeting. They may not have a place to hold it. But it's usually in the bigger place. I can see, we did Conway.
Yeah.
So it can be half an hour, 40-minute drive to get there.
If you can't find somebody more qualified and you just need a warm body to represent the town, I'll be willing to do that.
All
Okay.
right,
If somebody more qualified comes along, please feel free to replace me, but.
all right. Well, what I'll do is I will, if we can this week, let's reach out to anybody that we think might be interested in it. And next week, just come back with some numbers and I'll reach out, Lenny, to the person that you had referred me to and see if she's
Yeah,
interested.
that's the only one I could think of.
Totally all get started there, or-
I know that I traveled for one, at least one of them when you were unavailable, Chuck, and I forget, that one was a little bit of a drive. To go past the big water.
Molten Borough or something.
So, I
No,
think it was
Molten Borough's
beyond
another county,
Wolfboro,
yeah.
I'm not sure, I can't remember now where it went. I'll find some.
Yeah, I mean, the key thing is just to get some representation as part of that, so at least Effingham is well represented. they clearly know from my previous discussions with them that like, there's no money for this town to be doing major infrastructure projects. The key is they know there's a lot of grant money available. So there will be a case where part of the entity organization will also be forming to make sure they can receive the grant monies and manage it going forward. So more to come on that as we go forward.
Chuck, I was just gonna add to that, though, that in the meeting, there was, it's not necessarily all super technical stuff, but there were other companies trying to be involved, and there was evaluation. So if somebody did have a skill set to really understand some of the technical details, it wouldn't be the worst thing, because it isn't all just really layman's term stuff, because I was sitting there trying to keep pace, and there was clearly people way ahead of me in that room.
If there's somebody more, I've got a great admin background, but don't.
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing is they did a big consulting survey over the last year and a half, and I had shipped out some stuff around town to get feedback, which we did get on social media and other internet stuff. There were 3 companies that came to the table and put up 50%. We basically got a grant from the government. They did a huge study around the needs. So it's really determining where cable exists today in all of the communities in the county. And then part of the entity organization will be formatting how to decide who gets what first for services and how to pay for it. So that'll be all part of that design. If everything gets designed from an entity organization standpoint, at that point in time, there'll probably be a request to come back at our annual town meeting for us to officially join that entity as part of that conglomerate. So it's a ways away at this point. Lenny, you mentioned last week the shed down at the transfer station. My understanding is the road contractor is going to remove that salt that's in there.
Okay.
And get it back over to the salt shed and clean that up, and then put the current culverts we have in out of the sun. So we don't have any degradation in that poly plastic, whatever they're using for that. So that's supposed to be on the docket to do. All right, I have nothing else. Okay, next item. We got department updates. Mike, I know we've got you in for 10. You're here a little early. Do you want to dive into the current state of the affairs for health officer? I mean, we're going to do a meeting on the 14th here with the select board and the health officer and deputy health officer to talk about creating a more formal structure as required by the RSAs in the state for our town.
Okay, couple of things then.
Yep.
One, if I could throw in a comment, something Audrey brought up, which was the door. AJ's glass was in, Tim Eldridge came in one day, opened the door, and it fell completely out. I just happened to be standing right there with him. So that door has had some repairs before, and AJ's glass was the folks who put it back in. And one of the things I did was I got an estimate for budgeting purposes back then. If those doors needed to be replaced, that front grille, all those, it was about $10,000. Just a heads up. As to whatever you would like me to participate in, I don't have a problem in trying to set forward wherever you'd like to hear. But I think maybe some other people might not have got public comment, and I think Teresa probably has a more pressing schedule, so I would yield to anyone else if that's all right with the board.
Teresa, we can do that if you want to, from a timing standpoint. We can pull you up and have your budget discussions right now. So before we do that though, is there anything from a public comment standpoint that people want to basically speak about this morning?
I'll just let you know the 309 is correct.
So the dollar figure for that check is correct. Okay, no public comment. All right, let's dive into the pieces of the 2022 budget we want to talk about this morning. And Teresa's here to talk about planning board and zoning board.
He's taken. He's now reserved for someone else.
All right, Teresa, floor is yours.
Okay. Well, okay, so, apologize for what you were handed. It doesn't look exactly what I was supposed to fill out.
So
So I kind of tweaked.
do you have it broken down like
Do
that?
you?
I can go.
I
find
have,
them.
I have extra ones. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
No, I got busy this morning.
Oh, sorry.
I forgot about our 9 PM emails. No.
Okay.
Oh,
Sorry. I apologize. So then in the end, I only. Right. Okay, so anyway, I didn't have a digital copy, so.
Okay.
I dug one out of my files from last year and tweaked it, so that, and you'll see how I tweaked it. So we can wait a second for that. There's no change. I was proposing no change for the planning board in the budget request.
So do you think professional fees is going to be enough based on activities?
Well,
It may not.
but this is the thing, and so this is, and so we can, and you guys can help me try to explain this. So the thing with planning and zoning is that you never know what's coming. And certainly past, prior to 2020, the zoning board anyways was going, fewer and fewer and fewer cases, to the point where instead of meeting every month, we just changed it to meet as needed, because I think there was maybe one case in 2019 or something. It had just gone down from like 3 or something, or a high of 5 maybe. But then in last year, we got hit with bigger cases.
Do you see that as
We
a
did
trend
you-
increasing
Sorry?
with the way COVID has kind of changed the way everybody's operating? Do you see that trend staying the same or increasing with more activity?
God, I hope not.
Like, understand
And
that.
I don't think that, I think we've gotten the biggest entities in town. So I don't know if there's anyone else that do it. Anyway, we didn't use, so a couple things. We didn't use professional services for the zoning board. So I need to ask about how I did get a draft budget, and it had a number in there. We did use them for, so what I think of as professional services are, we had a subdivision, and it was a driveway crossing wetlands, and we needed a wetland scientist, an engineering firm, to make sure that the plans proposed for this subdivision were state of the art for wetland science, or what, I'm sorry, I don't know the terminology. So that's, and we did, but this was, so that's the one, on the one hand, we needed some professional services. The second hand is we charge the applicant for that.
Okay,
So if it cost us 300 or 3,000, the applicant pays for that.
so even though it may show up as a charge on your line,
Even
if the
though,
money's coming back.
yeah, so even though the applicant pays for it, we do pay it out.
Yep.
And that's what this is. So it's paying out, I hired Lenny to review this subdivision plan. I'm paying him, the town is paying him, applicant's paying us back. But this budget has to show what goes out. Unfortunately, I've always kind of wished it could show what comes in, because I'd like to say, well, okay, it could be 10,000 that we need for professional services. And we get, any amount that is in there, any service we need can be charged to the applicant. So I want to say it's like zero, but it's not, because of the way the budget works and municipal finance works, so it's a little beyond the average Joe and Jack. We need to have something in here so that we can make the disbursement, and it does not reflect that it comes back to the town in the line of professional services
Okay.
and in the line of advertising. So that, and postage. Okay, so those three things, which could be, I could be sitting here saying, you know what, we need 500 for advertising and, 800 for postage, because we've been slammed with these 30 a butter applications. And that's what the true cost is showing to be. Whatever it is covered by the applicant. Upfront, you get a check. You get a check. So that's one of the challenges with this, is that if I'm gonna ask for more, and when we get to zoning, I have questions about whether to ask for more. It's that it's just, if you all think it's smart to have enough in here for what might be charged to the board, we can do it. But those big items that are dependent on the number of cases or the kind of cases or the size of cases are money that circles right back to the general fund by the applicants. So that's the main concept.
Knowing the town comes out near even or at even for those three line items, personally, I've got no problem leaving the numbers where you've got them in there. Unless somebody convinces me otherwise.
I just want to, professional services didn't exist some years ago, and it was through, I've advocated for it. Part of that was going to trainings and understanding how other boards, CBAs and planning boards were affected, and had that line. And there was actually a training at the spring conferences, and lo and behold, an attorney that we all know, Matt Surge, was the presenter. And he was the individual, as you know, he's the town's attorney, that said you should have this in your budget lines for professional services, and went on to, discuss why. Now, from the planning board in the ZBA position, we haven't had a lot of those things come around, but the world is getting a little more sophisticated. Dealing with water courses is a primary driver for something like Teresa's pointing out, the usage. Complicated subdivisions where you need these firms. And on the ZBA, if you, as we're finding, there'll be actions. I think the ZBA is faced with a case that was going to go to court no matter what the decision was. But sometimes you need expert testimony or witnesses to present an alternative at the point of meetings. So theoretically, the board might need to hire someone, because there's a professional in the room presenting one side, and that's all you're going to get. And you could be in the situation of needing to have a independent review.
And that's good. So having a professional services line, I've got no issue with.
Right.
From a standpoint of what's in that line from a budget, as long as it's $1 or more.
That's why I'm about to address the board as to your concern on this. Now, the boards, they're going to spend whatever money they need. The situation overlapped from one year to the next, where I believe it was just over $5,000 was paid out to a private attorney because of the nature of the case at, I think it was the ZBA. So that was on a professional services line for $1. Now, the thing is, say that's $5,000 gets spent, that comes out of your operating budget somewhere where it isn't budgeted, and $4,100 was spent on engineering fees at the planning board for reviews. as long as you're comfortable that your board isn't gonna turn into a financial issue, then it doesn't have a real impact. But that's what can happen. If a lot of fees get attributed to these expenses, they're not accounted for in the normal budgeting practices. So your operating budget, the Board of Selectmen will have to compensate for this.
So I think what you're saying is if we budget $1, which
ZBA.
with ZBA, we did do $1 the last 2 budgets for professional services. Because the caseload was so low and it was somebody coming in to build a shed. If it's $1 and we need a scientist, engineer to review something, it's coming right.
Out of our budget.
So we're still gonna do that because the applicant's paying for
And
it.
that's good from a clarity standpoint, just so people are aware, while the town may be netting out at the end of the day because we charge the people for it,
Right,
the money that's getting paid, we cannot use
Correct.
because it was not appropriated at the last town meeting.
right.
So as Mike and Teresa pointed out, if we don't have a number that's large enough for an estimate of what we think is the real world in here, then anything that has to be spent above that line item is going to come out of the normal operating budget for the rest of the town. So there may be something that doesn't get done elsewhere because we needed the money to pay for the professional.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so it does have a real impact on you if it's not, or could. If it's not a realistic guesstimate. And again, I don't think, unless Dave hasn't been it, I don't think there's a harm in a guesstimate that's generous, if you want to use that word, or realistic. Because it's only going to be spent, if it's spent, there's the applicant being charged.
Yep.
Um,
and I think we've used if I'm looking at the budget actual, we used 750 out of that line item this year.
Yeah, I honestly believe with the planning board, it was much more than that. But maybe most of those costs were in 2020 as opposed to 2021. So if we had done 1,000 in 2020, and I'm sorry that just have no memory of last year doing this. But I think we didn't have good. It's challenging for the front office to deal with these. It's intentional bookkeeping because I give them a check for $500 from an applicant, and it is tied to this, but it's not. But it's
showing the revenue, it's not
yeah,
showing.
it's going into the general fund.
Yep.
It's helpful to know if we got that. It's helpful for you guys to know that our budget didn't. Anyway, this is why it's complicated.
No, it's good.
I think it was a lot more because we had a lot of engineering on a wetlands crossing. And I can't come up with what that was, but you said 4,000?
That was mostly in 20.
Yeah, but so was it
4,000.
4,100.
Okay, so let's say 4,000.
Mm.
That was one application. One subdivision, one driveway. So the 750, yeah, I think that was also that same subdivision. But it carried into the next year. So I just went with the 1,000 because that's what had been there.
It looks like it's been there for 2 years, 20 and 21. So we've lived with it through the discussions for the last 2 budget cycles.
Yeah, so we've lived with it, and again, like Mike was saying, I'm not really that worried because we're gonna pay, if we need somebody, we're not gonna say, oh, you know what, we're not gonna have this driveway evaluated because we don't have the budget for that.
Yep.
Because we're charging the client, so that kind of gives us the ability to say any cost to the town is charged to the applicant.
But you guys are gonna have to pay for the contractor that we hire to
You
do
still
that
have to pay out
function.
for it before we get that.
So the out will be from the town, the in will be typically from the applicant. One of the things in a little history here was back in it was Michael Pukowski was on the budget committee for decades. And when I first proposed this, he went with just $1 on the ZBA, excuse me, And $1,000 he let stand on the planning board just to see how this would evolve, because we hadn't used it. So, not that it really matters, as Teresa says, you can fund the ZBA for $1 and the planning board for $1, whatever they spend comes out of your line item. But for a long time, that didn't really get effective. But of late, it has been getting effective. And with the migration, as I'll call it, to the North Country, and that we're seeing in the past last year, an anomaly with current use, land use changing, moving out of current use, and the potential for that, because we've got a lot of large acreage. It's in current use, it gets pulled out of current use for development purposes. And that's when you might run into more situations like this.
What
You
do
don't have to add to the line, you should be aware that you could be impacted at your budget level.
Right.
So Teresa, you're recommending basically keeping it 1,000 like it's been for the last 2 years.
That's all I dare to recommend.
No, that's good.
But if you,
Tom?
but what I mean, you know, and Dave's the budget chair, he knows that, say, it was $4,000 last year. So-
But in realistic terms, you can never nail down a number. And in realistic terms, the money comes back, it just goes into the revenue.
Right,
And we know that we hold back on certain categories of payments until later on. So we're not talking a huge amount of money here. We know
No.
it's gonna be level, so to me, that's a realistic number to put a placeholder in as opposed to $1.
okay, I feel like I don't have my head totally around the cash flow.
Yeah, you're still gonna get what you need.
Yeah, I know it's not gonna affect what we're gonna do, because we're gonna charge the applicant for those.
Yeah, I just want to
kinds
kind of
of
make sure
costs.
we're on tape, everybody understands, just because we're charging doesn't mean we can use that money when it comes in. It's gonna go into the general
Oh,
fund,
Oh,
exactly,
Yeah, exactly.
and
yeah,
it's coming out of the money that was appropriated at the last town
Right,
meeting.
right, but the other point is that what is not in our budget is attorney's fees. That's in the attorney fee line item of the town.
Mhm.
So that's not in professional services.
I think we've known that.
Okay, well then, because we don't have to switch yet to the zoning board, but, I have a question about what those professional.
Hold on
fees
one
are.
second with that one.
Yeah.
Lenny, any other questions on this professional services item?
No.
Okay. Secretary, salary, you're comfortable with keeping the number?
You
level?
know, do you have any recent, do you know? We don't know.
What charges you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, we did do a calculation, so what I can say, what Dave knows is that,
1264.
is that,
Yeah.
well, yeah, what I'm pretty sure is that's not all.
Okay.
What,
No, because the way they charges.
yeah, what I don't know, but I hope is that the 2,000 is a good realistic number. We have used, I can attest to using less administrative support because I'm doing more. We do very much need a minute taker for the land use boards. If anyone knows how to take minutes, or knows anyone who was, the challenge with taking minutes for the land use boards is that there's terminology and concepts that aren't everyday lay concepts, and so it can be confusing and a little beyond just average, but it's not. So there's a little bit of a learning curve to just understand what's going on, but with subdivisions and site plans.
Yeah, and the planning board, zoning board, and the budget committee all have a minute taken, and between the 3 chairs, we try to make sure we pay the same to keep it at a reasonable rate, that we see other towns are paying their minute takers.
I just want to make sure we're good, based on the way everything around us is going
I
up
know
in price.
we had a solid calculation.
Okay, good.
So I'm hesitant to make any tweak to it, but I can say that we don't have all the numbers in. And
Like 12.
we aren't using the person we do use as much in some ways as I need them, but we are using them more because of the cases and the communications required So I'm sorry that I don't have anything better but to say,
It's good.
we knew it, why we asked for that in the beginning, so I'm gonna
just-
stick with it.
Teresa, I'm only asking the question for clarity for the tape,
Yeah,
because I know people really want to
yeah,
understand.
sure, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a solid figure.
Land use support has traditionally been weak here in Effingham, and that is to say that we used to have two people that were longtime planning board employees, and they had things down pretty good, handled things, and we don't have them. And getting someone who can dedicate that kind of time is not there right now. So land use support is weak, and there's a lot of statutes that regulate timelines, and they're not always being met. So one of the things I've been looking at for years was trying to do something more, whether that is office staffing or support at the board level. And it's going to come to a head, and it's going to need to be dealt with at some point. We can be called out legally on things timeline wise, and this has been floating for a long couple of years now. And it's deficient, and it's gonna need some support at some point, because there's a lot of different ways there are not a
Well,
lot of
that's-
different
that
ways,
was
but
the
there's
reason I was
different
asking the
ways
question
to support
is the money a right amount? Or because of where we know we are today with the activity levels we're doing and we're required to keep up to? Do we need to look at a better number so we can potentially hire somebody that might have some more of the expertise?
Well, as it stands, the budget committee has a minute taker, but the ZBA does not, and the planning board officially does not, because it's a member of the board who's generously giving her time right now, because she's a good typist, and that's wonderful, but that I would give anything to remove that burden. And so this is a number that's calculated based on the way we have done it. Some town like Ossipee.
Where do we need to be? We gotta-
Okay, so what I'm saying is that I did not do this
Okay,
budget for that,
okay,
and
all right.
and I'm happy to have that conversation.
Would you do a little homework in that area? On that line item?
If I could meet with someone else, maybe like, yeah, I would.
I see those positions advertised through NHMA, so we could come up with looking for a minute taker, because they don't have to be a resident of Effingham.
No, they don't.
And so we may be able to find someone retired in Freedom or Wakefield.
I did already try to hire the person that's doing it in Freedom and Tamworth, and she's,
But.
I'm just saying as an
Right,
example.
Right.
as an example, and she's like, I'm already doing too many boards.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
she's skilled because she's done these kinds of boards before, so she'd be perfect, but she's already doing too many boards, and you need people who can do
And that's
first and third Thursdays and whatever.
That's good.
hours.
But
I
the money,
So-
the money
to-
the money calculated out that me and Teresa had done is to cover the expected meeting minutes with the money calculation.
Yeah.
That's.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
already realistically an amount that's needed to cover someone full-time to do the minutes, taking in the meetings.
I-
So we've
I
already
hear what you're
calculated
saying.
that.
I'd rather look at some of the information that's on the NHMA site, find out what the hourly rates are.
Yeah, which I already,
We have done that too.
we already
From
did
the-
that.
Did you do it this
I
year or
didn't
last
do
year?
it, no, I didn't.
We
do
did
it.
it last year.
All right,
We did it last year, but I keep up with it, the papers of what's being advertised.
okay,
And when I was chair with Teresa on ZBA and just recently with budget, we advertised ourselves and held our own interviews. So that's what's, any help in that area, I'm sure, because Teresa is slammed right now. That's what we did to get someone on the
Oh,
board.
yeah, that's true too.
We just advertised ourselves,
Right.
and we still have that, that's in your emails of what we, in the job description. That you still have that, and all we did was advertise and send out the job description to any applicants. And then we met as chairs and hired who we wanted, and then presented it to the select board for approval.
The other side of that coin, though, is there wasn't a lot of responses. And part of the deficiency that has permeated for the last several years is that we haven't attracted people that are more or less professionals or well-versed in land use regulations. Here's the critical factor that will cost you money. The person who's taking minutes now for the planning board, that's great, it's a member, it's distracting. And maybe certain details are not going to be that person's forte as to what to capture in minutes. When you go to court, first thing that's coming out on the table are the minutes. If you miss the very critical nuances in what needed to be captured that was said by board members or whatever in that time frame, you're basically gonna be screwed. So having people that know how the terminology and what is pertinent to capture in a discussion and included on the paper, your minutes, is really key. And here again, we've been dodging bullets.
All right, so
Okay, so.
can
I
you,
will
can you
do
get,
some
can you get that job outline? Work with Audrey on it. Let's get it up on the NHMA site and see if we, let's scope it out and see if there's any
That's one place
takers.
we didn't
Oh,
advertise.
yeah, I did.
We just
Just-
went in the newspaper.
And see if we get some takers.
Doesn't cost anything.
And give us an idea, because if we need to, we can always come back and adjust this line before the final meetings. But I want to make sure we've done the right homework and we're getting the coverage
It's
that's
definitely,
needed for both those
uh,
boards.
you know, an hourly rate that's the 15 to 17, you know, rate, you know, and so that it definitely wasn't like it was not paying. It's just that you kind of have to, one is in the evenings and you have to.
You should have the job descriptions, because I know when me and Teresa did it, we sent it to the office with the job descriptions. If you don't, let me know, I still have them.
Thank you.
Okay, any more discussion?
So that,
When you move on,
that's the planning board budget.
I was just gonna say on the contracted services for the planning board, one last consideration is they update the zoning ordinances and those get reviewed by your attorney. Some of the zoning ordinances are getting more complicated. I, in the past, have spent hundreds of hours on certain things, other ones are pretty quick and easy. But there's a potential in having professionals work on a more detailed zoning ordinance amendment could be something. So just to let you know that there's money in that line you could be spending, just for future thought.
okay. Tom, Lenny, anything else?
No.
Are you comfortable with the 5961?
Yeah.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the 2022 budget item 4191 line item planning board in the amount of $5,961. Second,
Second.
all those in favor, all right?
Alright.
Good. Teresa, thank you very much for that.
You're welcome. So turning to the zoning board budget, I did make some changes. I saw that advertising was a little more than what we budgeted. I still think that seems like it's low, but maybe it's not, maybe it's not. So anyways, I had bumped that up by $50 and bumped down by $50 the books and publications. I will say that Office of whatever the Office of Energy is going to be after taking out the energy and making the Department of Energy, whatever's, anyways, the book public, or let's just say LRPC, the books and publications for land use and have been online, and they are online, but we it's a priority of mine to make sure they're not updating. They didn't update in 2020. They're gonna update in 2021, but not until like now. So this fall, so on this year's budget, everyone should get publications out of the 2021 budget. So I'm a little less worried about the budget for books and publications in 2022. But we'll see what those numbers are now that the departments are changing and whatever. For postage, I bumped it up because I know it's more than $7. I don't know what the $7 is, but that would be one.
Oh, we haven't split out the postage yet, that's why there is more.
We're also waiting for Nate's expense voucher.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
Yeah, I don't think I've gotten none from him.
so yeah, we don't have, so again, it's hard to figure this. I mean, maybe you could go right in now and know what meters used, but he definitely, some charges have gone not through the meter due to,
A lot of them, he said.
Oh,
He's-
okay.
He's paying most of them out of pocket because we're not here when he's doing that.
yeah. So
And
that's
we
one
have
of the,
that expense voucher.
so we do have a clerk, but he doesn't work here. And he does try to come in here and leave things for me so that I can run it through the meter. But, you know, he works full-time, an hour south of where he lives in Wakefield. So he's not someone who can say, oh, I'll just come by. He does come by. He literally comes
He does,
from
but
Wakefield
it's a special
here
travel,
to drop
yeah.
something for me to
Yeah.
put through the meter and then drives to Belmont. So, so anyways, if we're trying to guess more exactly, then I'm not sure whether I honestly don't know the numbers. 300 office equipment we're not doing, right, mileage, we didn't do, most of the trainings are happening online. I hope that continues. The one that I just missed, I think I can catch up on because I think it's online. So we still need money for training, but I reduced the mileage. Workshops, I reduced slightly because what I tried to bump up was professional services, mostly because I guess we need to talk about it. The computer services, I'm assuming that's the Dropbox charge. So we needed during COVID to have enough space for our meeting recordings. And so we've been paying a monthly $14.99 or something like that
Yeah.
for an expanded Dropbox. So I'm pretty sure, and if it is $14.99, I think the 180 is right. The annual cost. Professional services, I don't know what the 3641 is. If that's the attorney's fees,
Yes,
Yeah, that's the one you had.
that's partial. It was a carryover. Partial payment was in the previous year, and that was carried over from Mr. Bolt, Attorney Bolt, into the next budget cycle, the invoicing.
oh, okay, so attorney's fees typically are not in the professional services category. We did hire special counsel for a ZBA case. I would still think that in other words, we used to instead of the town attorney. So I would think that still would come out of the attorney fee line item, not professional services. But it brings up the subject of special counsel, and I think it's called special counsel if you don't use the town council. But it's not uncommon for land use boards, because it's its own area of law, to have, not just because it's its own area of law, because sometimes the zoning board might be on one side of an issue, and it's possible that the select board might be on the other side of an issue. If that were to happen, the town council goes with the selectmen, and the land use board needs its own council. There was a matter where that was a potential for there to be a legal issue with the town. And so that is why we were advised to seek special counsel in 2020. Aside from the possibility of needing that, a few of us have talked about the desire actually to have someone a little closer to Effingham, a little more focused on land use issues, a little more
It's often the case for land use boards to have their own attorneys versus the town's attorney. Because what happens is now you're in a scramble for an attorney, which case you may not be getting the same pricing, and you run into that conflict of interest when the town's attorney firm
If
can't.
we've got an attorney we think you might want to use in that specialty area, we can look at the pricing of, we can.
yeah, I would like to, again, that's not in this budget, and I'm pretty sure that's still the attorney line item. But I'd like to talk to you at a different time about engaging counsel that would be specific to the planning and land use, so that it doesn't It's not the same council, it's the same service, and it shouldn't be any more, and it may be less, but it just separates, it just gives the boards their own counsel, which might help with review of a particular item. And it certainly would be then in place if there were ever an issue that there might be any contest about.
Have you done your homework so you get an idea of what you might want to
The
do?
person we used last in 2020 is someone nearby, is someone well-respected, well-regarded, I was impressed with his services, so I'm not hesitant to use him again if we needed him. So, yeah, I have someone in mind.
Can you think about an estimation of what you think you might need for a budget for a line item like that?
Yeah, see, again, I don't think it would be any, unless we can look at your attorney budget and see what the costs, separate out what the costs were for planning and zoning.
We can certainly do that.
That might be,
Let's
might
do
be-
that, Darlene.
it might be a guess, but still it would be, that might just be a guess. We might, I think in most of my years, we never, other than what Mike mentioned as sort of the annual, we're doing our zoning updates. Lenny made these really great suggestions about tweaking the zoning ordinance. We just need to run it by the town council, we'd run it by this attorney instead of town council.
So let's let Darlene, if you can run some of the numbers to give us a little clearer picture. And then Teresa, we can have a short discussion, whether it's a dial in or more come in.
Yep.
To see if we want to make a modification to the legal line.
You may include all building, all planning and the zoning.
Yeah, the idea, I think, because the planning board writes the zoning ordinance, the zoning board has to apply it. And interpret it. I think having both, if we're gonna do it for one, it makes sense to do it.
I want to look at the detail of each one of them,
Yeah.
kind of as a summary, because I know when we get to the budget committee part of it, there'll be a lot of questions like why, blah, 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 and we've done our homework. It'll be an easy discussion.
Yeah.
Um,
And again, that would then be costs that wouldn't be in the rest of your line item.
So professional services originally was in there to capture some legal fees, although it didn't define it as legal fees. But this is where we're probably finally hitting the point of the discussion where you could have professional services and a legal line, so that now you can separate those two things out. And the reason I would look at that is if we say $2,500 for each board for a legal counsel. Well, we know it can go beyond that pretty quickly, but you've got a number. But it's a way to take the burden off of the select board's legal line, which in any given year can be stressed. But it would also provide the same coverage that in any given year, if you exceed your legal line to the point it breaks your budget, your operating budget, that's when you get in trouble, except under certain circumstances, and legal is one of those. So if the overage was such from the land use boards that it pushed the Board of Selectmen's budget over its appropriated number, it's a safety net. So if you have that legal line, you had some crazy case, you went, your operating budget was right down real close and tight, and pushed you over. Having a legal line to spend it on, at least it would be well defined.
So based on this discussion, Tom, Lenny, I'm thinking we add a legal line to both the zoning and the planning, and then we'll deal with the numbers when Darling gets it. We'll come back and revisit both of these schedules. Sound good? Any downside to that, Mr. Budget Chair?
I don't think it's needed.
It's a
believe-
clean, I would rather
I'm
keep.
just giving you my opinion.
No,
You
I
asked.
just, as I'm thinking about it though, it provides a clearer picture of the work being done under a given board or commission, where legal work's required and what that cost is. It's still gonna come out of the bottom line for the town, no
Well,
matter what.
You just asked, and
Okay.
I don't think it's needed, and professional services cover it. You can break it out, it's only an estimate. It's gonna be, most of it's gonna be paid back to the town if it's used by the user.
If
And
it's,
if this is a one-off thing that happened between one business in town that raised that up. So considering what we're having for increases in the town, which we're almost at 170,000 increase now, to speculate that you would need something just because of a one-time use, I would not be pushing that in the budget committee. So just, you can do what you want, obviously, this is your budget presenting to us. But
And
I don't see
but I
the
would-
value added to this because it could be broken down at any point by a budget detail to give you any information you need to get for that professional service line. I don't see adding a legal line because I don't believe you drop your legal line. Because
Well,
you know-
I think we should, if we do add a legal line in these two areas, I think we do need to revisit the legal.
But we,
You can
we
use it
know,
as a
we know we
placeholder,
had,
though.
we know we had issues, and we've had issues ever since I've been here of not controlling who calls the legal. So which one gets called first, or where it gets called, now you get another one you can call. I don't see this as a reasonable alternative to trying to fix something that we've had issues with. We have a legal line, we have a budget legal line, we know we can break items out of the detail, and we can get the detail that we need to spend.
You don't need to fund it with a lot of money. You
I
can
don't,
put it in
yeah, and I don't disagree with you.
Well, that's
Chad.
what we have here right now, we have. to
But
do something.
Dave, I don't want to be in a position where every time we want to have a discussion, we got to go to Darlene, and say, Darlene, send me the breakdown of that particular line for everything. I'd rather have it, when it comes in, it shows up here, so we run a budget to actual, we actually see the numbers. We don't have to go back to the table and create more work.
You're not gonna see the actual numbers on everything, because you're gonna see what's budgeted. You won't see it until the final year is done, when you pull the detail sheet, so you're not gonna see it there. Not until you pull the detail sheet, you get the final numbers, so you're gonna have to pull the detail sheet anyway.
Do you?
When it gets paid, I would charge it to this line
Right.
if it
It
was
would,
what,
it would show up.
it would show up.
Does
On the
some-
budget to actual, it's gonna
Yeah.
show up, yeah.
Does some towns break down the legal line?
Every time I worked in,
Yeah.
it's only two, but
I mean,
yeah,
in other words,
most of them have
instead
their
of
own legal line.
here, instead of here in planning, would the legal line, I don't know what the number of that one is, would that one be broken down to a subcategory for land use? If you
I
want,
haven't seen it that way, that doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
Yeah,
We can find out,
I just think there might be more than one way if you're trying to have that.
but
number.
why, it would be,
Right.
why not just put it in your budget then?
Yeah, right, because the ZBA has a court case
Yeah.
pending.
Yeah.
You're going to court.
Yeah.
And there's no way around it, no matter what decision the ZBA was gonna make. This one, I said at the outset, this one has the legs to go long distance in the court system, potentially Supreme Court, and we're going to court.
Okay. I'm in favor of doing a legal line on both of these items and waiting for a decision until we hear back from your breakdown of numbers, and if we need to revisit the planning board one, we'll revisit that. Where we just approved it.
As towns grow, planning boards and ZBAs, they go to court.
The days of us staying small and putting our head in the sand are fast disappearing.
Nothing happened, so nothing happened, but things are starting to happen and the potential seems greater. Just saying.
Lenny, Tom, in agreement or no?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Teresa, thank you.
Okay,
I'm
so,
gonna, I wanna, I mean, I'm good with the rest of your numbers.
okay. So,
We're gonna get a breakout of what's already been spent from
I'll do the year,
planning.
we'll do the year.
planning zone.
Just to give us a bit of an idea.
Yeah,
There are alternative ways to account for land use boards. I'd have to look into it, but it's been years, so let's toss around. There's other ways to record the income revenue and it's, versus the expenses. I forget all the nuances, but I'm sure you've experienced it with that.
I don't know what it's called, and now you just asked me about it too, and I'll just have to do some homework.
I'm drawing up blank.
yeah, it might
So-
be-
But I think
for the-
part of for here is our revenue is not really broken out a lot.
I was gonna say, so
It's
that-
dumped into all planning, all other departments. We could break out a little bit more, what's postage, what's applications, what's, whatever. And so you'd see a better understanding of your revenue.
We
But
don't
right
have-
now, it's just dumped into,
yeah,
we don't have a
even
land
if it's
use
land
fund.
use revenue, even if you didn't break out postage, advertising, even if
for
there was a
now, it's
regiment,
all the permits and everything are in the same. bucket. So,
So,
I mean, that's
one-
nothing to talk about, and I don't think it'd be that difficult to do,
Once-
maybe start January first, not now, but.
Once you've done your homework and get the breakdowns for these two areas, would you mind coming back in and spending 15 or 20 minutes?
no, not at all.
Okay, because I think, the discussion is predominantly around this area.
Yeah,
We don't have to go into
I don't
detail.
remember my schedule, because I didn't use
Pardon me?
the right form.
Sorry.
When is when am I supposed to go?
Oh,
This is
here.
supposed to be-
The budget meeting?
We're gonna, you send that
Is it on the
okay?
page?
I have it right
No.
here.
You're on.
No, we'll make that decision.
Oh, 13th.
I'm not gonna
Central.
hand it out
Dan, you
yet.
just got it.
No, that's.
We
the select
approved it.
board.
but if
Oh,
there's
sorry.
modification, not that we voted
My
on
bad,
it,
sorry.
modification.
26.
26, okay, so this doesn't, these budgets don't go to to the budget committee until the
We're,
26th.
we're trying to get a jump on things,
Yeah,
Teresa.
we got time.
We're trying to
Yeah, I'm just saying that's,
start everything
that's,
early on our end.
that's awesome.
Okay.
Woo-hoo.
So,
We're trying to get a. total
Thank you,
figure
Effingham.
again. Total figure again, if we can, right?
yes,
So I'm
Yeah.
happy to come back before then.
okay,
Sure, started that process.
All right.
super.
So do you want to approve this as it is? Or do you want to?
No, where we know we've got to have this additional discussion.
Yep.
We'll leave the other one approved, and if we make a change to it, we'll revote it,
Okay,
and we'll vote on this one at that same time.
okay, I will say that due to the, not just the demands and my 10-day vacation, I did not, this hasn't been approved by the boards. I don't know if that has to be. I think I'm anointed as the chair too.
I think there's been a certain apathy to really dive into the budget at the board level.
Yeah, so just,
And there is the other, it is been said in the past on some land use boards, well, it's the chair's budget. So I wouldn't get
Yeah,
too,
you can still
Yeah.
show them and still make changes. We have plenty of time to still make changes.
yeah, so just a
Okay,
heads up on that.
yep, we'll try and get this done and have this additional conversation as quick as we can.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
just, have Nate
All right,
shoot it out to everybody, get any suggestions.
Rebecca's in. I want to take a 5-minute recess, and then we'll come back here in 25 minutes of the hour.
Now I'm late.
Better late than never.
I'm not.
There's something to be said for that. That's right.
So on Tuesday. Yeah, probably. Are we still being?
Yes. I'll give you one.
When did you do the switch?
job description would be, how much they would get paid, is all something that we started touching on,
Mhm.
but never really hammered out. So that's not in there.
So here's my thoughts on this one. Looking at one of Rebecca's recent reports and knowing she was only able to do 2.5 hours of road time around town to look at all the different stuff that we've got going on and finding more stuff that we know is there that hasn't been caught yet. I'm thinking we need to add a second body under Rebecca's leadership and work with her to define what the duties would be of that particular body and do it for 8 hours a week on average.
So then pretty much all these lines will be increasing.
The mileage one definitely would be from, because of the fact that they'd be getting mileage doing the drive arounds.
Workshops.
I think that person might need some training.
Yep,
Telephone, a new telephone.
Well, that'll be interesting because what they will use for telephone would be something that would have to be discussed. There isn't an office phone out there anymore.
There is now.
There is, oh, okay, there's a general use
Yes.
phone line out there that they could use, just as there was a general
Well, I was
use.
thinking more along the cell phones, they're gonna be out too on the road, correct?
Well, I managed 15 years without anything but my personal phone on the road. It wasn't until this summer that I got a cell phone. So assuming whoever you hire has their own cell phone, I didn't find that a cell phone was all that useful on the road especially. I found it was useful, given the limited hours I worked, to be able to handle people's inquiries when I wasn't in the office. Which was the argument behind it. I mean, part of the argument against it is that all of 153 is pretty much a dead zone as far as cell phones go. So there's no way. I mean, I've been caught many times thinking, oh, I'm about to go by so-and-so's, I'll give them a call and see if I can drop in and do the inspection, and, no connection. So I would suggest that this added position, this road warrior, as we could humorously call them, may not need anything beyond their own cell phone occasionally. That they can work with that phone and the desk computer that's out there that has full access to the tax assessing cards.
that's good.
And
The telephone charge you have in here right now that you're projecting for next year, is that your cell phone times monthly times 12?
yeah, I asked Audrey for a guesstimate.
Perfect, okay.
I think they haven't quite settled it in yet because we did have a previous Verizon account
Sure.
with the police department, so there's some adjustment going. Plus, we're supposed to get one free, well, you're gonna have to pay me back for it, but there's a month
Credit.
based on what I paid when I set it up. But, so, yeah, I'm happy to do that and resubmit it, but we'd have to have a conversation about, I think 8 hours is probably more than necessary. I really do.
I want to discuss with the board about tightening up the amount of lead time that people are being given to follow up on your letters. And it's either got to come on your plate to do that or be added to somebody else's plate to do that.
Tighten up the amount of lead time, meaning,
Well, I'm looking at one recently that's been the big topic of discussion down on 153. It's like you had to respond by September 3. That's almost a month ago. Have they responded and applied for what they were supposed to?
well, they're supposed to reply to the planning board.
Right.
So that's an interesting question in terms of responsibility and authority. When I tell someone that they need a building permit and they need to go to site plan approval, and they submit the building permit to me, and I mark on it that it needs to go for site plan approval, and I hand the packet over to the clerk of the planning board. What's next? Am I supposed to be following around to
No.
make sure?
No, but
Or
that,
is it
that,
up to the planning board to track it? I mean, it wasn't actually an unusual amount of time. In
no,
terms
I
of-
just threw that as one
No,
example.
I know.
But I mean, the
understand.
RVs are the other big one. I mean, I've been at you since last March with an RV that I know is in violation and it's still in violation.
Yeah.
And it's like, there are numerous things like this that from a timeline standpoint, we need to tighten up the enforcement on it. And I'm not sure you got the time to do all that with everything that's on your plate now. That's why I'm thinking an additional body count. might be able
Well,
to say some of
and are
that.
we suggesting then, this is, this ventures into how I do my job, but are we talking about someone who comes back and writes letters that I then sign? Are we talking about someone who's empowered to do enforcement that is what my job responsibility is? I mean, it's a kind of interesting situation in terms of how you peel off part of the responsibility of this job. Frankly, I mean, a good question would be, what would you guys consider the ideal situation? Would you consider the ideal situation hiring me for an additional 8 hours a week? Is that what you would consider ideal?
I thought you had told us you didn't want to do 20
I'm
hours.
not, but I'm asking you. I mean,
I'm going on the assumption based on what you said,
Yeah.
a number two body, but you said you didn't want 20.
no, I probably don't want 20, but the question is what is best for my department and what is best for the town and what is best financially for the town and for the community. And, how we go about that is important because once you divide up the responsibilities, you end up paying for an overlap of responsibilities. Because
Cross training is important, but I also believe in having at least a second body that's aware of how you operate. You leave here today and get whacked in a bad accident and you're out for 6 months. We don't have anybody to fill in for you right now. And if we
Okay.
had a part-time person, at least we could keep the lights on, even though they may not be fully versed in doing everything that you would do.
Okay, well, then that's an interesting way of looking at it, because then basically it does sort of veer back to what we were saying before, which is rather than it just being a field person, a road person, it's actually someone who's more in line with assisting me in my job. In which case it sounds like a job description and me looking to hire an assistant, which is a different situation. It's, I mean, we're talking about someone who's actually assisting me in my job. It has to be someone that I'm comfortable
What
with.
else would he be though? Because he doesn't, I mean, if you get someone, you're not gonna have your qualifications, right? You've been in the job how long?
15 years, yeah.
So we bring someone in, they're gonna be looking at you for,
Absolutely.
There's a training curve. It's
Absolutely.
part of
I'm a
having a
training
second
curve, but
body.
I also, I'll say right now that I think one of my advantages in zoning enforcement is that I don't live in the town. And if we're thinking of bringing someone in as my assistant and grooming them perhaps to replace me down the road, I think we should look beyond the community and look outside the town. Because I honestly think, I mean, I've had a lot of experience in this, and I live in another town and I worked in a third town. And it's my experience that enforcement, when it takes place within a member of the community, where they're enforcing on their own neighbors, is nowhere near as smooth and comfortable it is when you use someone that you don't have a voting issue with, is one way to put it. That not only can I leave it when I go home, but the people I work for and with know that I don't have a townwide policy axe to grind against any of the elected people or anything, that this is,
I don't believe in limiting the pool looking for a best candidate. I'm not disagreeing with anything you're saying, and that would be a hopeful point, depending upon the candidate pool.
mhm.
But I don't want to automatically rule anybody out. just because
No,
they live
I'm
in
not
town.
suggesting that.
Okay,
I'm just
all right.
saying that to look at it the
Because
other
we'd have
way,
to put it out as an advertisement. go
which
through
is
the
to
whole
say, the best person is someone who's right around here who knows the town, is limiting your options
Mhm.
in a way that may not benefit you in the long run. And if you truly are thinking of this as a way to bring someone in that can support the position down the road, then that's different from an extra hand. It's very different. I mean, it's no secret to me that there's some people in this community that want to see me out of here. So
yeah, but
I'm-
that's not what this is about at all.
no, I know that's not necessarily what it's about, but,
It's about just getting stuff done
I do have to be aware of that.
and you're busy. You
That's-
said it yourself. And that's all we're
You're
trying to
aware of
do.
it. That's the least of my concern, because I'm not worried about that piece.
Okay.
I am worried about the actual job function. and the way it is growing and some of the things I know we're not doing that we should be doing. And it's one of those things like, I'd like to see us put a little bit more hours behind it to tighten it up a
Would you
little.
like me to take this before this goes to, budget committee? Would you like to take, me to take this back and add a budget line for a, whatever we want to call it, later be named later. One of my favorite phrases in all environments.
Would you call it a deputy zoning officer?
Well,
or-
I wasn't originally, when we had the conversation about it before, I was not thinking of it as someone that could fill in when I'm not there. So I wasn't thinking of that. I was thinking of it as someone to handle the perhaps onerous task of following up on, entrenched violations, we could put it that way. Not so much ones that we haven't gotten to yet, but ones that we've gotten
On
to
board.
and repeatedly come back around and around and around again. I think actually, if I wasn't spending time on those, the run-of-the-mill letters out to the newly discovered RV would happen like that. There would not be a
And see,
problem
that's-
with that.
That's where the definition, you've
Right.
got the experience to define what that separation would
Yeah.
look like and the definition of it. I'm more than happy to sit down with
I
you.
think it's following up on stuff that's hanging on.
Okay,
Is really the place where we could get a gain and with a more minimal amount of training, because if you're talking about
Yep.
the rest of it, you're talking about, and not saying it wouldn't come with the job eventually, but to hit the ground running, you're talking about someone that can be handed a sheaf of violations that, okay, I've sent this guy a letter, it's been sent back, and time has to be spent figuring out how we get a letter to this person to tell them in violation. You go do that. You figure out where the mail should be delivered to. Whatever legwork is required. I mean, I like detective work as much as the next guy, but there's nothing that drives me crazier than writing a letter, sending it out. It goes really quickly. I note the violation. I get the address out of the file and send it out. And 3 weeks later, it comes back addressing unknown, and we have no information on how to get that letter to that person.
it's gonna be changed.
Yeah.
So my thought alone, not these two gentlemen, was probably in the neighborhood of 20 hours total.
Okay.
8 and 12, if that works for you. And let me ask Lenny and Tom your thoughts.
No, I'm good with the 8 and 12.
And would the 8 be a flux similar to the 12? In other words, that a week when they only needed to work 3 or 4, that would be fine, knowing that there might be other weeks that
Yes.
would do more.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I still think it's more than needed, but if that's what you guys wanna try and get past the town and the budget committee,
Okay,
that's increasing the cost of enforcement in
Yep.
the community.
Yep.
And, I don't know, I don't go to town meeting in this town, so I have no idea. I mean, I've
Well,
sat
like
through
you said-
plenty of town meetings in my own town where increased budget lines in certain areas have gotten a lot of blowback, so,
it's definitely gonna be a discussion item. That's part of life.
okay.
So
want
the
me to
other
do
question I had is postage. Is
You want
that
me to, let's finish up on this, so
Yep.
I'll add a budget line,
Adeline,
and I
item,
can resubmit this,
name TBD,
Yeah, yeah,
definition
yeah.
TBD at this point?
as far as salary grade. I mean, that's not something we do in open meeting, because that's a personnel issue.
But an initial advertisement of it, 18, 20, somewhere in that area,
Okay, so that's a number that I could put in
just rough.
in
yeah.
terms of the budget line, so
And we
percentage,
may change that, but.
Yeah,
uh,
okay. All right, okay, that was actually something that I had a note of right on here, so I'm glad we covered all that, okay.
Would the equipment needs change? With a second body? Because they'd probably have to use the computer that's out there, Windows
Yeah.
based.
Yeah, that computer that's out there, Davis kept it up to date. In fact, I use it pretty regularly for property cards because the property card interface that's on public computers doesn't have the detail that
Yep.
the stuff we own. So as far as available for boards and committees and me, whatever, it's the desk computer out at what I think is Maureen's desk, that has the full information. It's password protected, but the passwords are easy enough to share
Okay.
with another board.
We could give you some,
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
it's okay.
And other equipment, when we talked about the telephones, and you said there's a landline out there that could be used, and as I say, you know, the cell phone was the because of working from COVID, the realization that I could do a lot of work and support the community by answering phone calls and stuff.
And I totally agree with yours.
Yeah.
At this point, if we're successful in going this route to get a second body, I'd rather start bare bones.
Yeah.
There's your computer, there's your landline.
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense. I think that makes the most sense. And that computer's hooked up to a printer and we can work out the details. That's why I'm thinking that if we start with stuff that's already up and running in terms of a violation that's in place or whatever, that then the correspondence that has to take place after that will have already been initiated by me, which, you know, puts it firmly in a place of being able to track it.
Okay.
Should this person need to be writing letters or whatever, that they would be piggybacking on an initial letter that I had already written, which I think is the appropriate way to go. I don't know any other equipment that,
That's good. I was just high level asking.
Yeah.
Next item, mileage.
yeah,
I
this
would-
mileage was based on a rough guesstimate. You know, of course, the past 2 years on mileage have been really kind of up and down because of COVID.
But think about a second body. This
Think
thing
about a
is-
second body. I mean, you know, the question is, as I said, I'm not sure they're gonna have 8 hours of work a week, but you know, in terms of their mileage, you know, that would probably go up.
I mean, I'd consider using the same number you had in there for 21,650.
Okay.
Because literally that's 300 and just a little over 300 miles from the.
Right, I didn't even go and look to see how much the reimbursement rate of per mile might have changed. I usually look that up.
It's like 54, 56, somewhere in that
Last,
area.
last year for the budget, we just kept it flat.
Yeah.
You know.
So I mean, it just, at this point, if we use the rate that's being used elsewhere in town,
Yeah.
at 650, that gets you about 300 miles.
Yeah. Okay,
Postage, does this cover your annual mailing?
yes, it does, that's the reason it's so high. The annual mailing is split under postage and printing.
Okay,
So that's why those numbers are as high as they are. I mean, it's the only printing cost I generally have. Well, no, I usually take my set of maps and bind them so I can use small sets, bind them so I can carry them around in the car without them going all over the place. And same with my regulations. So there's a, you know, like $9 worth of spiral binding in there with printing and then the postcard.
Okay.
Pretty much what it
that,
is.
that particular mailing gets really good press in town,
Yeah,
and that's an important. It
I
really
think-
is.
I think
Well,
so.
well worth the spend.
Yeah, okay, and thanks for the endorsement of that, because I was pleased with the responses I got from it the first year I did it. So.
All right. Supplies,
Supplies, the dollar was left in there as a placeholder, so I had a line.
Comes out of our budget.
Yeah, it's a general supply budget now.
we'll leave it as a box, keep it as a line. item.
Yeah, and the reason there was, I don't know if there's an actual this year. The previous year was some stuff that I ordered working from home, some, you know, dividers, some letter trays and stuff like that. Standing file thing, which, you know, came back in and are now out there. But generally, it's paper and envelopes and file folders and stuff, and I'll, you know, I used to get stuff at Staples, and now I'm supposed to get it through the general supply budget, so I'll do that. But every once in a while, there's something wonky that it seems like it's easier for me to just do an order. I think I think the telephone. Where did we put that? Did we put that in equipment? No, oh, the cost of the initial cost of the telephone would have been an actual for this year, probably under telephone.
It's in the contract, isn't it?
That's on the selectmen.
It's under selectmen's contract, so there is nothing for you on that with that.
Okay, and the
No, we're
base,
talking about something else. We're talking about our cell phone.
The actual cell phone,
Cell
not,
phone?
not the
Ah,
landline.
okay, not the landline.
no, no. So there was the cost of the cell phone and the, you know, the safety case.
Yep.
That was put somewhere in 2021 actual.
I put it in equipment under your budget of $261.
Okay, so that line, so my equipment budget's gonna go over this year. It's one of the things that I usually do in October or November, as I look at what I've got left in other lines to see if where I have to pull back or have extra time, extra money for hours. Because it's a bottom line budget,
Yep.
so we break it out like this, but, you know, if I haven't spent a line, usually I haven't done a workshop in a while, you know.
And my question is, if there was a second body count that needs work, out, 75 covered.
Yeah, I think probably most of the really good workshops are free with, you know, the municipal association. The law.
Most of the ones we're doing are paying $70 a pop.
Well,
per
you're
head.
doing a different one, huh? The ones I went to, I mean, I went to the law lecture series. My first couple of years, I went every year or every other year for about 5 years. And they were really, really helpful. The last one I went to was like a year before we did the junkyard initiative. Which I went to especially because they were doing a section on junkyards. The other two, you know, it was an all-day thing, and the other two sections were stuff that I was pretty familiar with, but the junkyards was a valuable thing to do. So I don't know if, you know, whoever we hire, if they have gone to any of these. There are basic ones that planning boards and ZBAs and other elected officials go to that are free, and if whoever this person is has availed themselves of that through an interest in serving on a board or town stuff, then maybe they won't need to. But one specifically on enforcement. There was one on enforcement this spring or early summer that I was not able to go to. I had a conflict that would have actually, I think, been helpful.
Do you know if that was a charge item for that?
There was a charge item for that.
All right.
So, and some of these, you know, may still be available as webinars for charge, which is the other route to go. There's a lot more stuff available, even through the municipal association, online demand now than there was 10 years ago. I mean, 10 years ago, it didn't even exist. You drove to Concord or Portsmouth or wherever it was, which was great because you got to meet everyone else who was doing your job around the state, and it was a great way to, you know, build camaraderie with those people. But it's not as common anymore. They changed the law lecture series that used to be given like 9 different times in 3 different locations. They changed it to a 1-day, all-day thing in Concord, which meant that if you couldn't go on the day they held it, you didn't have any other options, which I thought was too bad.
So here's my thought on that line item. We know the NHMA numbers are $70 a pop. Put 140 in there,
Okay,
one per person.
there we go.
And if we need additional, we're just gonna.
And
have
if it's a good, you know, if it's a basic training one, maybe the new person will find a free one.
Right.
If it's a good one that applies to enforcement, then we should both go. Because nothing like a brush up, and
Exactly.
nothing like going with your coworker so you hear the same language.
Okay. Tech support. What is that one?
Tech support is because I work on a Mac, and I sometimes need to get tech support that the town doesn't have. Now, the guy that came in, what was he doing? Remember there was someone who came in a few weeks ago that was doing a coordinated upgrade or something of all the different computers? It was really funny because I made a joke about it. He was working on a Mac. His laptop that he was
So
working on
why
was a
wouldn't
Mac.
we include her mat coverage underneath the proposal you're getting ready to do on RFP on?
I'll talk to you about that.
Okay,
Okay,
yeah, I have a great lady who does the work for me, so, and she's,
we're trying to get consistency under the
absolutely.
everything from a
No,
town,
I
but as long as
understand.
we know they can cover Apple, I wasn't aware they could do that, so that's perfect.
Well, I assume, I mean, if it's the person we're using, I assume he can since he works on one. So that would be great, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and I missed this one up front, so the dues and memberships you put at 0? So
I
within,
zeroed it out because we zeroed it out in 2020, then we put it back in. And there's not anything I'm subscribing to. I mean, PlanLink is free. I get my copy of cities and towns through the town. I'm not subscribing to anything else.
is there anything in the zoning world, like an association that provides educational stuff that it might be worth doing a subscription?
There might be bringing someone else on. There might be, I can explore that. One of the things for me, I mean, obviously stuff changes, but I keep up with it. One of the things for me was I started working in zoning, 25 years ago. And when I was a planning board chair down south, I went to a ton of trainings. I went to trainings on the urbanism and this and that and the other. So I've got a huge body of knowledge conceptually about the field. That's not to say it isn't worth keeping up on stuff, but there's a lot of stuff on PlanLink that, the PlanLink weekly postings of newspaper articles, that's free. So PlanLink, the guy on NHA who posts every Friday what the municipal association thinks in the news is worth following. And so that's free. You go to Conway or Concord or whatever, reading stuff about what decisions they're making. Conway there was just a lawsuit about short-term rentals. So, stuff like that. I mean, I feel like I'm keeping up on it. I don't feel like I need a subscribed newsletter. But
Well, good, because I hear we got some rentals coming to town, people are buying
Yeah,
the rent.
and I've got a friend who's on the planning board over in Sandwich, and they're wrestling with it in Sandwich. So, they ruined everybody's cocktail hour this weekend. With her and me going off on short-term rentals.
All right,
Everyone left the porch and went out to look at the sunset.
so can you kind of just rework this one, and would you be able to come back in a week or two and?
Well, shall we do it next week when I do my report?
Sure, perfect.
Perfect. And I was gonna ask respectfully if we could push me to 10:30 next week. We're a one-car family and my husband has an exercise class on Tuesday mornings. And having the car back in time for me to come over, it just, 10:30 would be a little safer.
This is important enough, even if we have to adjourn for half an hour or so, we'll do that.
Okay. I mean, if I get here sooner,
Yep.
if I, I'll head over as soon as I can. I mean, today I was here by 20 after. So, okay, so I'll try and have it ready and I'll ship it along then with the report when I ship my report.
Okay, that'd be perfect.
Whenever it be, probably Friday or Monday.
Okay.
Okay, I'm trying to see if there was anything else.
Did Lenny, Colin, have you got anything else?
Much else. We touched on the tech support. That was my question.
Okay,
All right.
So you want me to pull tech support line out?
Pull it out, we'll
Okay, so
take a
we'll
look at.
pull that out, we're gonna do 140, telephone we're good with, supplies we're gonna leave the dollar, printing and postage we're okay. Mileage, we're gonna go up to the other one, equipment, we're gonna just leave it sort of there as a placeholder for the odd thing that might happen. There's a memberships. Did you want me to put the 50 back in for the new person?
Only if you think there's a site that in the zoning world where they might be able to get some benefit.
Okay,
If you know there's one, I'd say put in for one, because I know those are very valuable for education.
I'll look into that, and then the new line for the play everything in later.
Yep.
Okay, you got it.
Good. Rebecca, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
All right, next up.
I did include Emmeline's, the Conservation Commission's budget. She's not scheduled to be here, but I didn't know if you wanted to review it.
Yeah, we could I think it's pretty straightforward, has been in the past.
Yeah, there's just a small increase in
All
land
right.
improvements and a small increase in water testing.
So let's grab the next one before that, Audrey, the
Okay,
solid waste
sorry.
cleanup.
Yep,
21 budget was 4,500 landfill, 2,500 PFAS.
and the quote we have for this year is $10,000. That's monitoring, PFAS, monitoring 4 wells and groundwater monitoring 5 wells.
10,000 total.
Correct.
Can you break that up again, please?
I don't have a breakdown of the amount, but the PFAS is monitoring 4 wells. And the groundwater monitoring is 5 wells.
Okay, so you just have a total figure, you're not.
Correct.
Do you want to put a number in there, David, or is it just like 7,500 and 2,500? Just know that the 10 is the 10?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with that.
Okay,
That's okay. As long as you know the figure, you get the data on that, Audrey.
Yeah, I can break it out too. I can ask for some further backup.
Yeah, if we can get it a little better, that's fine.
okay. Any questions, discussion? Okay, make a motion to pass the budget for 2022, line item 4325, solid waste cleanup in the amount of $10,000. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, for aye?
Aye.
Good. All right. Mike, have you got anything more you want to say? Because we're a little over the 10 o'clock hour.
Well, I think you were gonna ask me something about was the health officer's budget, or what was the focus?
The two things, I sent out an email the last day or so based on previous discussions we've had about meeting on Thursday, the 14th at 11.
Yeah.
You, David, the three of us. So we can actually review or start the review of what we need to do as far as getting updated policies in place. And I think that should be the focus of that session, is what do we do and how do we do it?
Yeah.
So the other thing that I would like to do too, and from a discussion standpoint with Lenny and Tom, we've discovered this year and last year that what we have not been doing under the RSAs for health officers really predicated Mike and David Garso being involved this year. And I will tell you, there's not enough hours in what they're doing to take care of the issues they're dealing with. So I'm actually recommending next year that we actually put 2 line items in as stipend payments for both positions. And I was thinking 4,000 on the primary and 3,000 on the deputies. And with that, it'll allow us then to gather real world data around the number of hours that are actually taking place based on the stuff that's out there and the stuff that's going to be coming our way, to determine whether those numbers are accurate for the future. I know it's not covering the time today, that I know, but I also don't want to, where we're starting into this, I don't want to bump it too high. Thoughts?
Oh, I believe it should be a stipend.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if that's.
What
enough,
that
but-
figure is, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Well, that's why I'm literally going, if it was like 4 hours a week, $20 an hour, that's $4,000 a year. And I'm just doing that as a round number, because I think 4 hours a week would be a minimum. I'm thinking some just the legal work, Pep case Mike's been working on right now, that blows by 4 hours in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's gonna blow past for.
I do, but as Lenny was just saying, I don't have a real good flavor for a higher number. But I think we need to do something to start it, and then in the following year, track it, so we know exactly what the volume of work is for the future budget.
Yeah, 'cause I think we'll be quite surprised once this ball gets going,
It'll be
what
higher,
it's actually gonna be.
it'll be higher.
Oh, yeah.
So, excuse me, so just a little thought on all of that. the board as the Board of Health, when we meet the select board's Board of Health at that point, I think all our discussions.
We get paid a stipend for that? I'm
I don't know, guys.
I'm only kidding, folks. I'm only kidding.
That was chock full of it.
So with that, and part of your email was some of the privileged conversation that I was looking to talk to. I don't think that has to be the Board of Selectmen. I think it's the Board of Health, because that's going to be bringing you up to speed on what I've been doing. And then from.
And that meeting on the
legal action
14th?
Stuff, that'll be you guys as another board.
That meeting on the 14th,
Right.
we advertise as a public meeting for selectmen, which will also include a non-public, just to work on some of that stuff.
Well, there again, I sent you, I guess you probably haven't saw the
Nope.
email. I thought it could fall under the Board of Health, because
Okay.
any board can have a non-public. And that's gonna be specific to that. So however you choose to handle it, you're supposed to keep minutes.
Yeah, I haven't seen your emails, so,
Okay, so deal with that later. as you
Okay.
will.
all right.
But when we convene as a Board of Health, I guess part of what you want to accomplish, having a position as a health officer is really gonna dictate a lot of where this goes. We have a lot of RVs that probably are exceeding certain parameters and have for a long time. I wasn't here, unfortunately, it's caught in another conversation, so I didn't hear Rebecca's zoning officer's input, but I know there's been past discussions where she feels there's a handoff somewhere with these RV septic systems, how that's being handled. So there are a numerous amount of these properties that need to be checked into and regulated, potentially. Then you have other situations that we're well aware of that I want to bring you up to speed on an ongoing situation. We run into some other things that the gentleman didn't follow through with it, but we had a rental property in town that you would all know. It was a complaint. I initially checked into it, but he balked at going further because of exposure to himself, in the complaint. I just recently have spent a lot of time in the last few days, since last week actually, on being reached out by someone. I don't want to get into specifics, but it has to do with maybe a rental property and a business. And there seems to be some division between whether that business has a license and the another offsite facility does not license. So
And that research you're doing right there is based on a citizen complaint to the town.
correct.
Okay.
And that gets pretty murky because there's just so many overlapping jurisdictions here. The state has things in licensing, they would take it, but the satellite facility isn't licensed through the state. So now part of how it gets paid for to be a residence there. If it's Medicaid, Medicare, then the federal government can come into play. However, if it's not that, there are some other avenues at the state level that I'm trying to follow up with DHHS and DES to find out who, if anybody, would regulate or have some, interdiction on whatever's going on through those agencies. If not, it could fall back here. The health officer for the particular type of complaint has to take the complaint, but there are no standards regulating that particular item. But it is a serious life safety health code issue, which is why the state would have taken it at the licensing level. That brings me back to a conversation that I'm going to have probably later today with the fire chief. I believe he's down at the fire station today, so I'm going to bounce in and talk to him, because we collectively put together an ordinance for safety inspections in the town for non-residential, call it commercial uses, because this is the, and apparently there's a regulation in the state that if there are 4 people that aren't related or more cohabitating in one, like a sober house or some kind of, whatever it may be, then it falls into another category, which I'm still trying to explore to find out what that is. So it's so murky, who has the ball? And just,
Okay, so I know you spent a ton of time so far in 2021 in this arena with the health officer.
not
And I
enough
know,
time,
and I
but
know,
yeah.
and I know we need to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Would an average of 4 hours a week cover that, or Is it bigger number or less than
I could say that's probably a reasonable number.
to start with?
Based on, I haven't been able to dedicate as much time as I would like to do this. I sent out a bunch of information to some folks, the board or town, on ordinances that are in place in other communities that we can use as draft policies to kind of pick and choose what might fit our community. So I haven't gone through those to kind of form a draft, but doing that would take a lot of time because these things do. You've got to tailor make those to your community. What flies in Rochester or Conway or Ossipee, that may not work in Effingham. So it's a delicate balance.
Yeah, and I know when I was doing some research with some of the towns, a lot of the health officer stuff is embedded in the building code stuff, which we don't have.
And there again, that's the life safety portion. Hypothetically, you deal with a mold situation, polyclac mold, and now that's in the building. What is that? Is that a health officer thing? Well, probably not. It's covered under life safety. Well, when you break down life safety and somebody, an agency wants to come in and regulate that, that comes under building codes. Why? Because mold is generally a product of water infusion or infiltration, which means your building materials are not performing the job that they're supposed to be doing. So they start mandating you have to do repairs to the building, and then there's some testing that follows. I don't know where to begin with that because we don't have codes. So it's life safety. What can be done with the fire chief? Chances are whatever can be done won't be finalized by him because he may say, yes, I've identified this situation, it exists, it's a life safety thing. I don't have the resources or the authority to enforce such an action. Now, where's that go? Most likely the fire marshal's office. The fire marshal can get involved in the codes in that administration because they have like a mechanical wings and, departments and stuff that branch out from just fire. Just trying to navigate this thing is kind of like you a Rubik's Cube behind your back. I gotta tell you, it's.
All right.
it's
So
a
we'll
process.
we'll start with a number,
Yeah.
and I know it's gonna be a low number, but we gotta start somewhere, so.
And then a lot of it goes to what you guys as the Board of Health want to see happen. How do you want to proceed? Where do you want to put resources? What do you want to focus on or not focus on?
Yeah, I think highlighting some of the septic system or lack of septic system issues we have in town that affect our potential groundwater and aquifer
Yeah.
is important to put a little bit more time and effort into. Because we've got a lot of people that are not following what they should be following on their
Potentially.
properties. Yeah. So,
So,
Okay.
yeah, I'll meet with you guys on the 14th,
All
and
right.
whatever number you throw in, it's just, it's
It's a
starting
placeholder.
point.
but I want to try and get some figure, but knowing that it's not probably the correct figure, because the correct figure would probably be a higher figure. So I just want to get us there for the time being and start somewhere.
Absolutely.
Will
Chuck,
you?
Can I bring up what you and I discussed about this?
You most certainly can,
Just
sir.
so the other two selectmen know what you and I
Yeah.
discussed. We know that this probably is gonna have to go to a stipend sometime, but it's always been a select board function. So one of the questions I had asked Chuck is, what happens when you don't have someone who wants to do it, it goes back to the select board? Is that stipend now gonna be paid to the select board?
That wouldn't, because the town select board can't be employees of it.
Well, all right, so you got a stipend, it's a select board job, so we don't expect it to be paid for the select, right? I mean.
Would not
that's
expect it
one
to
of the
be paid.
questions. And then you're opening up a slippery slope. Because the fire chief doesn't receive a stipend. The chairs of all your boards don't receive stipends. So those are the things that, I'm not saying that it doesn't deserve a stipend, but you're opening up a box, and I want you to know which box you're opening. It's gonna head to the wrong way. Not the wrong way, it's gonna head to a bigger way. So I just want you to have that information, that you know that this isn't just one thing you're opening. It's gonna kick open a lot of doors. So you know what you're facing. You haven't had enough time to sit there and think about it. Chuck has conveniently and nicely provided me that a while ago, so I had a chance to think about it and respond back to them, just so you know where it is. I have reservations, that's all. That's all, just so you have what I have.
So to help with Dave's angst on this, there was a warrant article placed some years back in the town that the Board of Selectmen, no members can be an employee of the town and therefore get paid for a position. So you guys, if you, if I say, I've had enough of this good fun and you don't have a replacement, you gentlemen start acting as the health officer, you wouldn't be, you couldn't receive a
We wouldn't
stipend.
get any pay.
It's the same with building zoning officer. Whenever you have an agent of the board, that person just walks away. Those duties fall to you. That's a paid position. It's no different there. But you cannot get paid to do that position. The town put a warrant article in including that very event. So just today's, I'm not sure you knew about that warrant article. So.
Oh, no, I was aware, but it was just something I wanted to bring up so they had it in their minds, that's all, because it, obviously, they would not spend it. I mean, I think they knew that already, but I wanted them to realize that it is a board function, has always been a board function. And that's what my point was.
And that's the problem I have.
And I'm
now,
not saying
because-
it was done because of everything on the board, it was done the way it should have been done. I'm just saying it's always been a board function.
Well, it's a pretty natural progression for a small town, though. You come in, small of the town, the selectmen do everything. It's like when we fill in at the transfer station, we don't pay, we have people down there, but if there's a shortage, we've always stepped up, somebody's gone down and helped out.
Yep.
But you end up wearing so many hats, and eventually, you get big enough and you have a department or a department head or an employee who takes that over. If that person doesn't come in that day, you don't get their pay, so.
I think we're at the point where we need to look at going to the next level, just based on what we haven't been doing, that needs to be done in town.
It'd be the same with like a road agent. If you were paying a road agent or DPW people and they weren't there, it reverts to the oversight by you guys.
Okay, good,
That's my thoughts.
perfect. Anything else?
For me on the matter, I think everything from that standpoint we'll cover on October, and it's up to you, gentlemen, where you'd like to go with it. I'm just trying to support you in the interim.
Okay, good, thank you.
Sure.
Deanna, I know we're behind where we said we'd meet with you. We need something or no?
Oh, no,
Okay.
I just have some time on my hands.
Well, thank you. All right.
Check, did you? Oh, I didn't know if
Good.
you wanted anything about the road project going on, because there was some tweaks added in there.
The Snow Road Bridge?
Yeah.
Yeah, go
Snow
ahead.
Road.
Nope,
Yeah, oh, okay.
the paving.
The paving was gonna be kind of a basic job and straightforward, because coordinating some assets has been a little problematic in the past, but pleasantly enough, Ron Evans reached out to me to say, hey, he had a few ideas, which were great, and I was thrilled. One of those was to add some materials in some areas with wheel ruts and weaker areas when you turn in from 153 and you see all the cracking on Snow Road. So with that, I reached out to Bruce Ryder at All States Materials and put a discussion in of how we could add materials after the grind takes place on the road. And he's amenable to doing that. I put Ron in touch with him directly so they could work the details out. So with that, they're gonna add some materials on Wednesday. They'll grind, and then they'll be adding, Ron's storing materials down at the transfer station now. And they're gonna take those weaker areas and bolster them. You've already touched on that Ron's gotten out there and done some ditching to try and keep the water courses away from the project. The other thing is Ron was looking to cut the asphalt at the lower gate entrance so that they can merge the paving in. We didn't check for dig safe on that because we hadn't asked them to kind of do anything with that entrance. But Ron thought that he'd like to see something done with it, in which case he's going to do the saw cutting of the hot top, remove it, and allow and put in whatever materials, and allow the paving company to match that up. So it'll probably just give it a little more elevation and line it up better than the drop it is. The road's probably going to elevate some when we get through there. So that's all gonna take place and should make for a little bit better of a road. And Ron will do the ditching after.
Do you know if they're gonna widen the apron coming out of that lower gate?
I do not. I didn't get to the discussion point with me anyway. Whatever Ron's vision is on that, he's gonna be working with the paving company to do that. Now, from the paving company's standpoint, there would be an increase on dealing with the added work. But if we put
Which is grading work, right?
grading, yeah, doing fine grading to blend that material in with the after the grind is up. So he said if we did, 600 yards worth of work, which I don't think we will get near that, he gave a price of 80 cents a square yard. So max money he was talking would have been about $3,200, and we shouldn't be anywhere near that. As far as the money for materials and the trucking, we actually carried a balance over of credit with Ron prior, and he's been working off that balance internally, and we'll continue to do that through this process. So your materials line and some of your labor line will not be affected by this project from money we had carried over from about 2 years ago. It never got fully utilized for one reason or another, but we brought that back out to the forefront, so that'll be offsetting some costs. So overall, your budget should look good, and your overall expenses, I'm gonna be contacting Jerry at R&D to see what likelihood we'll get those patches in. But again, you're not gonna hit $100,000 in road reconstruction costs on these items. Especially, there's a lot of things we've done on road reconstruction that'll probably fit under your existing contractor's line. So if we can put that end of year, you want to make sure you maximize your contractor line, get all your potential, carry as much money forward on your warrant article money to next year for when you do the road project on Green Mountain. So you should be really in good shape to carry over. I know David targeted 125, I had targeted 150. You should get the 150. And like I said, things like on Pine River Road, those costs will probably all go right under all our existing operating budget items. So you should be pretty healthy financially going into the next phases of construction of Green Mountain.
Any questions on those, John? Good. Mike, thank you.
Sure. Thank Ron. Thankfully Ron came to the plate and was willing to do these upgrades. So.
Yeah, because I actually think it'll help.
Oh,
Particularly
absolutely.
that road quite a bit by doing that little extra in there in those bad areas.
Yeah.
So,
Chuck,
Oh.
I had a question.
okay,
On the HEB contract for Bailey Road, I don't know if you saw in my town administrator report that that's not time expenses, it's lump sum. So I don't know if you wanted to revoke that.
no, it's actually, Mike's had the discussion with HEB and it's gonna be time and expenses.
Since his email to me, this is a quote. When I sent him that contract back, he said, no, it's lump sum.
They print it as lump sum. They bill as the work is completed.
I haven't
the
seen the
invoice-
email that you got already.
It's quoted in my report,
Yep.
but,
Did that email only go to you? Did you ship that out to the board at all? Or was it, do you know if the board was on that?
no, they weren't,
All
because
right.
it was my returning the contract to him.
Okay, then before I leave, you and I will look at that.
Okay,
I know that HEB had, Chris had confirmed that the 32,700 would be likely work that would be accomplished this year, and they would invoice up to that amount accordingly. And any expenses incurred that go beyond that for other phases of the project would be carried over to next year.
Next year.
So your maximum payment out would be 32.7, and he was not looking for the 51 upfront. That's what he conveyed to me. So if there's a different correspondence to that, it's news to me, and I think that could be clarified.
I'll talk to you after, Roger.
I'm gonna give it to the whole board.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
The other thing, when I read the contract, it's anticipated to be a pre-engineered structure that will be selected prior to the start of the preliminary design. And in the minutes, I don't know if the board has verbally said to the public that they've agreed to CMA's pre-engineered structure, if that conversation took place.
I,
Just trying to cross your Ts before you.
I would say that would be a no, because CMA's projection was a three-sided culvert where there's a potential for a four-sided culvert in this. That would be determined through core borings. So you need your geotechnical results, which CMA didn't do. So they can't, their report couldn't say absolute certainty that if you just put this on two sides, that it's not going to sink or distort in some way. So a full floor, four-sided box culvert might be an option. But it's the geotechnical results for borings in that
It's the
location.
two different borings that have not taken place that have got to happen to determine that.
Right, so they need to get those borings and read the results, and that's part of this contract because it wasn't part of the scope of CMA. That was one of the things in my discussions with CMA that was a weak point, is their engineer was saying, well, you know, we did a thing in Freedom, actually. We came in and we ran sheet piles down because we found out they started a project, they put it all together, but they never took the core borings. Then they found out the soil was soft, so they started running these huge sheet piles up and down, you know, grading, you know, just chomping into the ground until they softened it up and compacted it. And I mean, that might be a fine practice. It seems to be fairly new and not a lot of results from something like that were available to me. But the foundation is number one, core borings need to be done, those results taken, and then you'll know what you're dealing with, and then you'll know what structure you can put in there. So, excuse me?
Yeah.
It's all
Part of that
part of the
HEB.
proposal.
Part of that upfront piece.
So I wouldn't say that you've committed to the structure yet.
Yeah, I didn't think we had either.
Yeah, it's,
I didn't think so either.
yeah.
I just want to make sure.
Oh, that's good. All right.
While we're on that subject, probably you have down here Snow Road, it's Bailey Road.
Audrey, anything else?
No, I just
Okay.
wanted to clarify that.
Good.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next budget sheet, 4611 Conservation Commission. Has been submitted in. The Province Lake Host Program has been removed from that from previous discussion that we had. Will, based on earlier today, will be a separate line item under the other conservation. And it looks like the future land purchases, they're gonna keep at the same $1,000 where they budget proposed this coming year of $3,805, which is down from the $5,455 last year. But if we take the 54 out, in the 2,000 out of the 54, that's 3455. So their net is increasing their budget a few $100s.
We had 300 in land improvements and 50 in water testing.
Main improvements, no, what?
Land improvements were up by 300 and water testing was up by 50.
So main improvement went to 500.
Correct.
Yep.
I don't have.
I gave you a copy, didn't I?
None of that one.
And water testing to 1,000.
I remember.
Increase it, zero out the future land purchases. I don't want to buy any more land. Only taxable.
I'm gonna change the number on this department. It's on these sheets, it's 4611. It really should be 4619
On which one?
on conservation.
No, that is 4611. That's the way the state is.
I thought it was 4619.
No,
I swore I just read it.
Forest is 4619.
All right,
Other conservation.
you'll look at what I just read then.
Well, I'll go back and double check.
Because your other conservation is 4619.
19.
Right, okay.
I'll double check that too.
Any further discussion on this one?
No, I'm good with it.
Lenny, else up?
I just don't want to buy any more land.
We can't do much on $1,000 anyway, so. Make a motion for 4611 Conservation Commission to go with the proposed budget of $3,805 for 2022. Do I hear a second? All those in favor, for the right?
Right.
Thank you. All right, and let's see. Oh, look at this. Other conservation is already ready to go. Make a motion to approve 4619.1 other conservation for the Province Lake Host Program. Oh, wait a minute, maybe we need to discuss this one. I'll withdraw that. So the budget request for this is actually $3,000 for next year. Because of the amount of work it's taken to fund the monitoring of those boats. They're coming in earlier, they're staying later. And it's one of the few bodies of water in the area that still does not have milfoil. And as soon as milfoil hits it, our annual expenses are gonna go up a lot. So this is like an insurance policy to me. It also helps maintain, as long as the body of water is maintained, it'll maintain the property tax base for lakefront property. If the lake degrades dramatically, then the value of that lakefront property will go down, which will cause our taxes to go up. So, are you okay with Lenny? Any other discussion on that?
3,000 for the
3,000, yep. Okay, so let me start this motion again. Make a motion for item number 4619.1 other conservation to have a budget of, in 2022, of $3,000. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? All
Aye.
right.
Aye.
Thank you. All right. And I see solid waste on there, but I don't see,
It was just the cleanup.
we did already, perfect,
We did
good, okay, super. All right, let's see, public comment we kind of handled, non-public, do we need non-public? Hearing none, we'll move. Next meetings, Tuesday, October 5th, 2021. Budget Committee, Tuesday, October 5th, 2021. Selectmen's meeting after the holiday, Wednesday, October 13th, 2021. The Board of Health meeting, Thursday, October 14th, 2021. And the Board of Selectmen, Tuesday, October 19th, 2021. And Tuesday, October 26th, 2021.
That helpful listing feature on there.
I think it is, so people that basically want to hopefully listen to it and see it, that'd be great. Okay,
Can I just ask a question?
absolutely.
I wasn't due to meet with you October 13th, was I? About my budget? Do you have that?
I think we changed yours, and I thought I told you when it was. Hold on.
I think
Okay.
we did change it, but I don't remember the date.
Maybe yours,
Which-
maybe yours, I think maybe yours stayed the same.
Okay.
No, yours is still gonna be the 19th.
The 19th.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect. Could you just make announcement that my office is closed for training the 13th and 14th of October?
So the town clerk tax collector's office will be closed October 13 and 14 for training all day. Thank you, Deanna. We'll get that up on the website too, I guess.
Yeah. I think so.
That's okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay, is there anything else? Lenny? Anything else?
Nope.
All right,
I make a motion to adjourn. Second.
all those in favor, for aye.
Aye.
Thank you.